You know what it feels like to be completely invisible? To stand in a room performing the most intimate, important work, caring for someone else's children, and be treated like a shadow? For years, I lived in the luxurious, suffocating silence of the Caldwell mansion. I was their nanny, their lifeline, their emotional anchor, and their most convenient scapegoat. My name is Lily. I'm 30 now. And this is the story of how I took the pain of being told I had forgotten my place and used it to build the only place I truly belonged, an empire built on respect. The Caldwells thought they could discard me like an old, worn toy. They didn't realize they were throwing away the foundation of their entire childcare network. My revenge didn't involve grand gestures, public screaming matches, or lawsuits. It involved a single email, a concise, professional, two-sentence rejection sent years later when they were absolutely desperate. When my assistant walked in with their emergency request, I didn't gloat. I didn't laugh. I just sipped my coffee, looked at that familiar, arrogant name, and said, "Reply politely. Tell them we're fully booked." The sweetest justice I learned isn't payback. It's the quiet, powerful strength of setting a boundary that they have absolutely no authority to cross. Hello, everyone. If you've ever poured your heart into a job only to have your efforts dismissed, if you've ever had to beg for the basic human right of a day off, then this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let this be the fuel for your own quiet revolution. I'm Lily. I run Bright Steps, a premium childcare and professional nanny placement agency. My company is now the gold standard in this city. Every decision I make, every contract I write, is based on a single principle: treating my staff, my nannies, with the dignity and respect I was once denied. Today, I want to share the story of the Caldwells and the ultimate lesson I learned. Some revenge stories don't end with payback. They end with boundaries. This is my real-life story, and it's time to tell it. So let's begin. The Caldwell mansion was all glass and pristine white stone. It looked less like a home and more like a museum where children were occasionally allowed to wander. I started working there when I was 21. I was eager, passionate about child development, and desperately needed the high salary to pay down my student loans. I worked for Mr. Robert Caldwell, a high-powered attorney whose life existed solely within his phone, and Mrs. Victoria Caldwell, who spent her days managing her social status and her staff like two interchangeable departments. I was the primary caregiver for their two young children, 5-year-old Ethan and 3-year-old Clara. I wasn't just a sitter. I was their teacher, their nurse, their emotional safe harbor, and the one who cleaned up the messes, physical and too often emotional. I taught Ethan to read by candlelight after the parents had gone to bed. I calmed Clara's terrifying night terrors by rocking her for hours. I loved those children fiercely, and they loved me. But to the parents, I was utterly invisible, except when they needed a scapegoat. The nature of the injustice was the total erasure of my humanity. They never once used my name except in the context of an assignment. It was always, "Nanny, the car is waiting," or "Nanny, did you remember the organic apples?" I wasn't Lily. I was just the service. The money was good, but the emotional cost was catastrophic. My hours were officially 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 5 days a week. In reality, I was on call 24/7. Mrs. Caldwell would text me at 11 p.m., demanding I remake the children's beds because the pillows weren't fluffed properly, or casually ask me to come in on a Sunday because she had a last-minute charity brunch that simply couldn't be missed. The term personal life didn't exist in their vocabulary for staff. I remember one evening, I was finally eating dinner, a sad, rushed sandwich in the laundry room because I wasn't allowed to use the kitchen island. And Mr. Caldwell walked in, phone pressed to his ear. He looked directly at me, paused his conversation, and pointed at a spilled bottle of water on the floor. He didn't say a word, just pointed, waited for me to jump up, grab a towel, and then resumed his call as if I were a pre-programmed robot that had momentarily malfunctioned. The mental gymnastics required to stay calm and loving for the children while being treated with such blatant disregard by the parents began to wear me down. I suffered constant tension headaches. My jaw was perpetually clenched. I couldn't sleep properly because the stress had trained me to always anticipate the next absurd demand. I was trapped in a gilded cage, and the one thing I needed, time for myself, was deemed an unnecessary luxury. The conflict came to a head after 3 straight months without a single, full, uninterrupted day off. I hadn't seen my own family in 6 weeks. I was emotionally threadbare, functioning on pure obligation. My professionalism, my shield, was cracked. I walked into Mrs. Caldwell's office, a stunning, sterile room with a huge mahogany desk, to make a request. I rehearsed the words 3 times in my head. Polite, professional, firm. "Mrs. Caldwell," I started, clutching my hands together so she wouldn't see them shake. "I'm requesting a single personal day next Tuesday. I have a very important family matter I need to attend to. I've already prepared detailed schedules for the children and arranged for a trusted bath-up nanny to cover." She didn't look up from her tablet. She just waved her hand, dismissing the prepared statement. "A day off, nanny?" Her voice was a low, dangerous monotone. "I don't think you understand the level of commitment required here. Next Tuesday is when the children have their portrait session. Who is going to ensure their hair is absolutely perfect? This isn't a factory job where you punch a clock." "I understand," I tried again, my voice cracked, "but I haven't had a proper day off in months. I need just 1 day to recharge." She finally looked up, her eyes utterly cold. The expression was not anger. It was disappointment in a servant. "Recharge? You are well compensated to be available, nanny. When you work for a family like ours, you sacrifice your personal time. If you're asking for time off, you are clearly forgetting your place. You need to remember that your place is here with my children, fulfilling the job you agreed to." Forgetting my place. That phrase hit me like a physical blow. It was the ultimate statement of ownership. They didn't see a human being asking for a basic need. They saw a piece of property demanding unscheduled maintenance. That night, I didn't bother to argue or cry in front of them. I let the rage cool into a hard, diamond-sharp resolve. I didn't say goodbye to the children. The thought of their sad, confused little faces would have broken me and stopped me from leaving. I quietly packed my 2 suitcases. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "I resign, effective immediately." I left before sunrise, slipping out of the back door like a thief escaping a prison. I walked away from the money, the security, and the children I loved, because I knew if I stayed 1 more day, I would lose myself completely. As I drove away, the tears finally came, not from sadness, but from a profound sense of self-rescue. I was crying for the version of Lily I almost let them erase. I drove until the Caldwell mansion was just a memory in the rearview mirror. I spent the next few months struggling, working small, temporary contracts, but the trauma of the Caldwells remained a raw wound. Every time a new client was demanding, the panic would set in. I was conditioned to expect humiliation. I realized my healing wouldn't come from getting a better job. It would come from fixing the system that allowed the Caldwells to exist. That phrase, forgetting your place, became my mantra. I wouldn't forget my place. I would redefine it. I decided to start my own agency. An agency where the nanny was the client too. I called it Bright Steps. The entire foundation of Bright Steps was based on dignity, trust, and heart. I spent 3 years working maniacally. I designed a contract that mandated 2 guaranteed days off per week, paid vacation, mental health days, and an hourly rate that reflected their professional expertise, not their social status. Crucially, I implemented a strict family vetting system. If a family showed the slightest hint of treating staff with disrespect, they were immediately blacklisted. My business soared. Families were desperate for high-quality, professional, and stable childcare. They quickly realized that a respected, well-rested nanny provides infinitely better care than an exhausted, invisible one. Bright Steps became the gold standard in the city, known for its professionalism, integrity, and the almost unheard of fact that our nannies never quit. My office wasn't a sterile room like Mrs. Caldwell's. It was warm, filled with light, and decorated with art the children of my clients had drawn for my staff. I had built the home I never had at the Caldwells. The pace slows, details become vivid, building tension. Then came the Tuesday morning I had waited for, though I hadn't known I was waiting. I was sipping my coffee, reviewing quarterly projections, when my assistant Sarah walked in. Sarah had worked for me since day one, and she knew the story of the Caldwells. She laid a client request form on my desk. Her face was perfectly neutral, but her eyes held a hint of knowing curiosity. The name jumped out at me, cold and bold on the digital form: Victoria and Robert Caldwell. They needed immediate emergency childcare. Their regular service had apparently fallen through. I later learned their previous nanny quit without warning, citing exhaustion and disrespect. The Caldwells, always desperate and last minute, were scrambling. They were requesting a highly skilled nanny for an extended, critical period. They were asking for help from Bright Steps. They had come crawling to the gold standard I had built, without ever knowing the name of the woman who owned it. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't hitch. I felt a surge of pure, cold peace. It wasn't the satisfaction of hatred. It was the quiet triumph of having built an insurmountable wall. Mrs. Caldwell was asking the woman she once accused of forgetting her place to return and save her day. I took another sip of my coffee, savoring the warmth, the quiet, the total control of my own time and space. I looked at Sarah, who was watching me expectantly. "Reply politely, Sarah," I said, my voice calm, professional, and utterly devoid of unnecessary emotion. "Let them know we're fully booked." Sarah typed the email immediately. I dictated the words: "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, thank you for your interest in Bright Steps Agency. We appreciate you seeking out our services. However, due to our commitment to maintaining a superior quality of care and ensuring adequate rest for our professional staff, we are unable to accept any last-minute emergency placements at this time. We are currently fully booked for the foreseeable future. We wish you the best in securing alternative arrangements. Sincerely, Lily Hayes, CEO, Bright Steps Agency." The Caldwells would receive that email. They would see the name Lily Hayes. They would connect the successful professional CEO of the city's top agency with the invisible, disposable nanny they once humiliated. The realization would hit them. The person who held the key to their most desperate need was the person they had told to know her place. That was the payoff. I didn't gloat, didn't laugh. I simply closed the file. The emotional release was profound. It wasn't the rush of anger or traditional payback, but the deep, quiet, triumphant satisfaction of validation. I didn't need to ruin their life. I just needed to exist successfully outside their jurisdiction. I needed to prove on a systemic level that I mattered. I never heard back from them, of course. People like the Caldwells don't acknowledge rejection. They just find someone else to exploit until the next one burns out. But that moment was my closure. It was the moment I realized that revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about healing yourself so completely that they can no longer reach you. My success was my statement, quiet, powerful, and unmistakable. The lesson here is profound, especially for anyone who has been made to feel small in their workplace. The people who treat you as disposable are banking on your powerlessness. They are banking on the idea that the only option you have is to stay and beg for crumbs of respect. But you always have another option. You can leave and build the entire bakery yourself. Boundaries are the ultimate form of power. When I sent that polite, professional refusal, I wasn't just rejecting a client. I was rejecting my past. I was telling the memory of Mrs. Caldwell, you no longer have any power over my time, my energy, or my worth. If you are pouring your energy into a place or a person who perpetually disrespects you, remember Lily's rule. Stop fighting for a place at their table. Go build a table so solid, so high, and so respected that when they finally come knocking, desperate and late, all you have to do is politely decline. If this story gave you chills, if you found satisfaction in that final, quiet rejection, please smash that like button. I want to hear from you. What is the most powerful boundary you ever set against someone who wronged you? What did you build after you walked away? Tell me your stories in the comments below. And of course, subscribe for more real-life stories about comebacks, validation, and the quiet power of simply saying no. Thank you for watching.